From the headquarters of the Guild of Champions, this is the Becoming Thin podcast. And I am your host, Chris Terrell. And welcome to another week of your weight loss quest. How did this last week go for you, champion? What new challenges did you encounter? But more importantly, what failure did you go through? And what lesson did you get from that failure? Come on now. Don't let a perfectly good failure go by without you getting your lesson. That's your reward for your troubles, after all. Now, if you're new here, I've lost 125 pounds myself after an entire adulthood of chronic yo-yo dieting. Up, down, up again. Before I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired and fat. And I made some permanent, meaningful, and actual changes to my real-life lifestyle, habits, routines, environment, community, and to my systems of belief. Because it's all of those things that created me. It's all of those things that will create you too. And if you want to get results in your life that last, that persist, after the weight loss phase is come and gone, you're going to have to go change your lifestyle, habits, routines, environment, your community, and your belief systems. These will all have to change. If they don't change, and if you leave them all just as they were when you began the journey, you're likely to get the results that you had before. Albert Einstein said, you can't solve your problems with the same thinking you used when you created those problems. And I agree. But it's not just you have to think new thoughts. You have to automatically think different thoughts than what you thought before. You have to see the world differently than you did before. You have to see yourself differently than you did before sometimes. And with weight loss, where you're wanting to lose it and keep it off, we're talking identity shift. Like, think of your self-identity. If you close your eyes right now and you imagine your form, imagine yourself. Do you see yourself in a big body or do you see yourself in a skinny body? That picture, that's your self-image, as it is right now anyway. That doesn't mean you can't change it and distort it, but that very first image, when I said picture yourself, that's your current internally held self-image of what you look like. So if you see yourself as a big person, you might then think, well, I'll do what big people do, which is go on diets, get frustrated, quit out of that frustration, saying things like, this is too difficult, I can't stop, I don't know what's wrong with me, no matter how much I try, I always end up failing again. And so I just start forgetting about it because I feel bad when I think those thoughts. Like, I suck. So I just stop thinking those thoughts and I go think something else. You know, I might use food, might use a TV show, a video game, to just get myself thinking about something else until eventually I see a reflection of myself in a mirror and I'm like, whoa, I'm that big. Or I get a picture taken of me from a weird angle and I'm like, whoa, I'm that big. Or I go to the doctor's office, get on the scale, or maybe I even just out of my own sheer curiosity get on the scale at home. And I'm like, whoa, I'm that big. I didn't think I'd gained that much weight. And then what do? The cycle repeats. I think, oh, I'll be better. When I start losing this weight, I'm making all these positive changes and I'm starting to think all these great thoughts. You know, I'm like, oh, what do I really want in life? Oh, I want to be skinny. I want to be in shape and I want to be, but I can't say that to anybody because I might offend another fat person. So I'm just going to say I want to be healthy. I actually want to be thin, but I don't want to offend somebody. And, oh, they might not think great of me. And I don't know that I mean, they might see through that and see that I'm not a very good person. So maybe, you know what? I'm just going to say I'm going to be healthy. And so I don't offend anybody. But I know what I mean. Just not going to say it too much. And anyway, now I'm going to lose weight, right? And you're going to start feeling good. You're going to like set goals for yourself. You'll be like, yeah, I'm going to go to the gym. And you're going to go to the gym. And you're going to be like, wow, that feels good. I did that. And then you're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to throw out all this food. I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to get all brand new food, all this healthy food because I've changed. I'm a new person. And you're feeling really good. And you're talking about how great you are. And you're noticing like when you do that, you feel good. And then, but one day, for whatever reason, like, you know, because we can all pretend to be whatever we want for a few weeks, maybe even a month or two. But, you know, too much stress hits your life one day. You get in a car accident. You just have a few bad nights of sleep, right? And you're just emotionally not regulating super well. And, you know, now all of a sudden you're finding yourself wanting to eat. And it's like way more than it's been, right? And also like, the scale hadn't really moved much in the last week or two, despite the fact you haven't changed anything and you're still doing all the same stuff as you did before. And it's like, well, maybe I should do more. Gosh, I'm so terrible. Why don't I, don't you want this, self? Like, if you want this, you got to go sacrifice something, self. Like, come on, stop being so lazy. You got to get out there, go work harder. You got to stop being such a victim to this food. You're an addict. You're addicted to this food. You can't stop. You just got to get it all away because you can't be trusted with itself. We have to I have to micromanage you, right? I can't leave you up to any decision, self. We just start pushing ourselves more, and eventually it's just like the scale's not really moving as fast as it was in the beginning, because that's easy weight loss comparatively. And it's like it's just slow. And it's getting hard. You're getting hungry. The stress is showing up, and you're just wanting to eat, and you just got this self-talk in your head, just like telling you, it's like, gosh, you're so terrible. You're never going to lose all this weight. You look at you. You've been doing this for 3 months, and you're still thinking about food. You can't even stop. What's the point? What's the point of even trying? You're giving up everything you want, and the food's still not coming off. So it's like, well, what now? You know what I've realized? I never quit a diet. In my whole life, I never quit a diet. I mean, don't get me wrong, the diet was involved, but that's not what I quit. What I quit every time was the conversation going on in my head. I was quitting that old script in my mind. Would you allow someone to talk to a loved one the way you talk to you? Would you allow that? If someone who you have power over, who you both, like, you could physically overpower them, if a person like that walked into a room and started talking to those that you hold most dear the way you talk to you after you've made a mistake, what would you do? Would you stand idly by and let that person talk terribly to the person that you hold most dear? Would you let them walk in and say things like, gosh, you just suck. How could you be so stupid? You're such an idiot. You never really try. You quit everything you ever start. If a person walked into a room and started talking to your loved one like that, if you talk to yourself like that after you've made a mistake, what would you do? I'm willing to bet you'd step in and do something. Because again, you could overpower this person, so you might. But would you do it if the person was talking that way to you? Or would you just take it? Or what if you're talking that way to you? This question, would I be friends with someone that talks to me the way I talk to me? That question hit me hard the first time I started seriously considering it. I mean, it hit me real hard. Because I realized the answer was no. It was an emphatic no. I would not want to be friends with somebody that talked to me the way I talk to me. I had a lot of problematic self-talk within my mind. And I've been reflecting back on how I lost my weight for a while. It's literally my day job to figure it out and to teach other people that. Like, I'm pretty fortunate. And as I've reflected back on it, my journey, and as I've watched other people's journey and had the privilege of coaching others to lose a lot of weight, I've noticed that speech matters. Like, I already knew that with my journey, that for me as an individual, it mattered. And as I've begun to work with more and more people over the years and help more and more people lose weight over the years, I have come to believe firmly that the way you talk to yourself matters to everybody, because I think it's a human thing. I think it's just one of those things that if you're a human, your inner narrative affects your internal relationship, your internal state with yourself. My dad had been telling me that my whole life, that the way I talk about myself matters and I need to think about that. And I only like halfway believed him. My dad liked to sometimes believe in some of the hippy dippy woo woo shit. Not by sometimes, I mean, as long as I ever knew him. So as far as I know, my whole life he did it. I don't know. I don't remember. I never really asked him when he was younger. And so my dad believed in things that like I just had a hard time wrapping my head around. And so I would discard other beliefs with that. I would discount things. It became a convenient scapegoat when I didn't want to follow some piece of advice that my dad would give me. Because the challenge with the self-talk, when you start working on it, is it doesn't improve your life immediately. I mean, sometimes it does, but a lot of times it is a sort of think of it like an antidepressant, have to kind of build up in your system before it starts really working. It's kind of like that with self-talk. It has to like build up in your system. You have to like have, really stay with it every day for like 2 months or something. I'm making that number up, but it needs to be some period of time that's noticeable of consistency. But I discounted this. And also because I had heard like when you positive self-talk, I still remember the little ditty that I heard. A person's like, I woke up and I willed myself to getting better because every day I stood in front of the mirror and I said, every day in every way I'm getting better and better. And I'm just like, yeah, but like, what about the people that say that and still die? Like, what about them? And I just started, I got way too black and white with it. I was like, this isn't like, because I thought it was almost like magic, like you're speaking a spell, and that's what my dad was talking. I'm like, well, that doesn't work that way. We're not wizards. Well, I mean, in a sense we are. We're not, but like we create something in our mind and it ends up in the world. Like if you really stop and think about it, in the beginning of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the author Stephen Covey says all things are created twice, once in your mind and then in the world. To think of building a house, you build it as a blueprint and then you build it in the world. So like we're a walking act of creation, and your body is one of your creations. And the creations come from your mind, and your mind, you think, and thinking is just a conversation held inwardly. It's talking to yourself, to you. We're going to set aside, the ego self, the observer, and who's talking to who. We're going to just ignore all that. We're just going to talk about casual, everyday, ordinary self-talk. The way you refer to yourself. Do you have a name? I call myself Terrell. I'll say Terrell. What do you call yourself? Do you have a name that you refer to yourself as when you're talking to you? You see, after my dad died, I had nobody to talk to. And like I talked to him, I didn't have a suitable surrogate or replacement. And so I did it in my own mind. I'd have to imagine it. I would say, well, what would my dad tell me? Well, he'd probably tell me this. Well, what do I think about that? And I was like, well, I think this. And what would dad probably say back to that? And I was like role playing as if my dad was here in my imagination. Because the reality is I had known for years, like my dad rarely surprised me. Like whenever I went to talk to him, I pretty much knew what his advice was going to be. And sure, every now and then he might surprise me, with some technical thing, but philosophically, I'd kind of figured him out. We've been around each other a good while. And when he had passed, I realized I could just tap into that. I mean, I wouldn't know for sure if it's what he'd say, but it was certainly plausible. But what I didn't comprehend at the time when I was doing that, talking for my dad, I was actually just talking to myself. I was going, what would my dad say? And the only answers were answers my brain knew. Because if there was something my dad knew that I didn't know, I wasn't going to magically create it. Especially if my dad had never told me, but it was all in my mind. And I was essentially talking to myself. I was giving myself advice in the voice of my dad. I was improving my self-talk. But as I was reflecting on this, not realizing that that's what I was doing, I ironically came face to face with this, idea of like, well, my self-talk matters. My dad always says it matters. I've never really taken it seriously. I'm done not taking people seriously. I'm just going to try things. If it doesn't work, I'm going to move on, right? Because my dad told me to move on. If something doesn't work or you don't get it, move on. So, all right, let's move on. But I got to try it first. So I figured I'd give this a shot, right? I mean, I'm just going to commit to it for I don't know how long, at least months. I mean, I had no defined end date, but I was like, just commit to it for a while, just at least months of some variety, to diligently correcting your speech. I knew all the ways my dad would try to correct me. I mean, it's not like he was doing it anymore, but I remember like when younger and he would, really get me on using the word try or saying like I can't or I always, speaking in absolutes and black and whites. Or when I would give everything a negative twist or a negative spin. My speech would be nothing about how things might fail. He'd be like, well, how might they work, And it's just like, I knew how he would correct my speech because, he would do it. And I picked up things. It's not like I didn't pick up certain aspects of it. I just didn't go all the way. And now I'm like, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to practice. And correcting my speech has been a really fun journey, correcting my self-talk, making it better, making it more helpful for me. And I thought I could share with you some of the things I did that helped with that. Because I want you to get the benefits. Because honestly, changing my self-talk totally changed my relationship with myself, and it's made my life better. And I hope that it'd make your life better. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge I have not opened the Guild doors in a while. I've actually been moving the Guild from one platform onto another and moving it on a program called Circle. And so I've been in the middle of that, very distracted. And then I had a live event in Chicago with the Guild. But I'm getting ready to open the doors of the Guild again. But I'm also, with this move to this platform, I'm really excited. For the first time, I'm going to be able to start regularly offering short-term programs, like a 6-week program, a 2-week program, a month-long program, 5-day challenges. Like I'm going to be able to do all that. My other system was just technically too complicated, and it added too much administrative burden, and it would have been a distraction. But with this new system, I have far more. It's just a much superior system from Kajabi, which is what I was using before. I know most of you aren't going to be interested in that, but on the off chance you are. But with Circle, I'm going to be able to do these. So I just want you to stay tuned. Make sure you're tuning in to the podcast. Follow me on YouTube. You come to live streams there. If you're on the Becoming Thin Facebook group, which, by the way, that's totally free, you can come join the Becoming Thin Facebook group by searching for Becoming Thin on Facebook, or go to becomingthin.com. There's a link to it in the show notes. And I'll always be posting there in those places. And if you go to becomingthin.com and you download my hunger study guide, that'll give me your email. And whenever I launch one of these programs, I'll email you to let you know. Like, hey, these are the programs that are open. If you want to enroll in any of them, you can. I'm going to have all different kinds of programs covering all different phases of the journey. Because the reality is, there are programs you need at day 0 with the journey. There's programs you need after you've lost your first 20, 30 pounds, and what you did in the beginning is no longer working, sort of your first big transition. There's programs you need to get you through the marathon in the middle, emotional eating programs to help you when you're in your final 10 to 20 pounds, transitioning to maintenance, first couple years of maintenance. And these are just the high level ones. We have to work on specific skills and tactics. There's just so much you got to learn. And I'm excited to start bringing these programs in a way where before a lot of them just existed only behind the Guild walls, and now I'm going to be able to have them where you can a la carte it if you'd like. And so just stay tuned for that. But if you want to get on the Guild waiting list for when the doors do open, if you're like, hey, I'm wanting to do it, and I know this time of year a lot of people are starting to think I want to start working on my weight again before the holidays hit, head on over to theguildofchampions.com. You can get your name put on the wait list. And I will definitely email you when the Guild doors are going to open. So let's talk about how I improved my self-talk, what I did. The first thing I did is I had to accept that it matters, that talking about myself matters and it's real. Now, in my mind, I knew that there could be a placebo effect, but I was like, but even if it is the placebo effect, like it's having the desired effect. So if it works reliably, I don't know that I care. So I had to accept that, like, in my mind, I had to, as I was really working on self-talk, I had to give it my all and say, I can always change my mind later, but for right now, I'm going to allow my mind to fully believe that the way I talk to myself actually matters 100% of the time. I'm going to pretend that is true. I'm going to act as if, even though I personally have never tested it, I've never validated it, I've never really given it a series of a shot as I'm about to do, but I've heard a lot of other people talk about it. A lot of people say they do it. So I'm going to choose to trust that they're not all lying and that maybe there's some truth to this. And I don't want to have any inner resistance. I don't want to fight it. That's just going to muddy it up. So I'm going to release all the resistance of whether this is true or not. I'm going to just assume it is. Because if it doesn't work, then it won't work. If it's not real, it's not real. I'm not going to like make up stuff and, pretend in magic fairy tales. I'm not going to do that. But if I see a tangible difference, I'm going to keep doing it because then it works. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to stop and I'll pick up my old belief. So I just set my belief on the ground and picked up a different one. And I started complimenting myself immediately every day. I would compliment myself. A lot of times it was the same compliment. Like your hair, man. I didn't have a lot of things about myself and my physical form in the beginning that I liked. But I found the few things that I did, and I made sure to compliment myself on it privately. No one around to echo it. No one would even know I did it. A lot of times my complimenting was in the mirror, in the bathroom. Because I was alone. There was no chance of being interrupted, and I could see myself in the mirror. As time went on with my journey, with my weight loss journey, and with my self-healing, self-improvement journey that was going on at the same time, I continued to compliment myself. Always on the lookout for something new to compliment myself on. And it really made me feel good. Not only that, I was on the lookout to compliment myself for my actions. You see, at first, I was just complimenting my results, my physical appearance, what I've done, what I've achieved. Then I started complimenting what I'm doing, which I guess in and of itself is a result, but, we're getting deeper into it. So when I would get up on time and having gotten sufficient rest the night before, feeling refreshed, I would compliment myself for going to bed and saying, that was good. Good job. Like, you really did good, self. Like, I feel really good. I'm so grateful that you did that. And with the complimenting, also, there came a lot of gratitude. I began to regularly express gratitude towards the me of yesterday, the week before, earlier, old me, the me that doesn't exist anymore. I would look for reasons to say thank you to my old self. And when I was in the present, I would talk to my future self, being like, I'm doing this for you, man. It was weird. It was like I was talking to my future self, and then when I became future self, I would turn around and respond to past self. And somehow both knew. It was so bonkers, like how that works. It's kind of cool. It's not like, again, this isn't like weirdness. Like, just go try it. You just go do it. You'll see. It's just kind of funny how time works. But as I was searching for the presence of positives, I was beginning to choke out looking for the presence of negatives. Because I was looking for reasons to compliment myself. I was hunting for them. I was on the lookout for them. The mission was to compliment myself, which meant I had to look for reasons to do it. I didn't understand at the time that what I was doing was robbing brain cycles and devoting them to looking for something positive, and that meant my brain wasn't off looking for something negative. Of course, my brain still went and looked for negatives when I wasn't doing that. It's just before, it was nothing but looking for negatives. Now it's looking for negatives and there's positives. And I really liked how the positives made me feel. And because I was doing it consciously, I kept doing it because it made me feel good. And so I got conditioned to do it. I started getting a dopamine hit from talking to myself nicely, and I started wanting it. That was really cool. It was so cool. Now, another thing I had to do with my self-talk is I had to figure out how to talk about myself truthfully, but not in a disempowering way. Let me give an example. I might use something like, I always fail on the weekends. Because I'm wanting to convey that I fail on the weekends. But there's the problem with saying it that way. Because remember, the brain is always listening. So when I say I always fail, that A, if there was any successes, that means I'm willfully ignoring them. And let's be honest, I did not fail 100% of the weekends. I did not. And I'll bet you did not either. I figured out some weekends I didn't fail. But because I said I always fail, I didn't go look at the weekends I didn't and go, why did it work there? Let me see whatever I did there. Let me see if I can duplicate it. No, I just said I never win, so I wouldn't go looking. And now, to be honestly, even if I did, I probably would have just called it a fluke. So, because I wasn't interested in collecting wins. I was interested in collecting my failures. And so, but I also wanted to acknowledge that it's likely I'm going to mess up again in the future. I always fail on the weekends. I always fall apart on the weekends. So I wanted to acknowledge I've struggled in the past, and I'm going to struggle in the future. And I'm reminded of a scene in Scrubs. It's when Carla and Elliot are treating a patient that wants to get, I believe, for prom, and they promised the patient that this patient will be out in time for prom. And Dr. Bob Kelso, chief of medicine, comes in. He's like, "Where's the wiggle room?" He's like, "Don't promise anything that you can't deliver on." He's like, "There's a chance. You got to leave the wiggle room in your speech." And of course, the kid wasn't able to go, and they had to go eat crow and say they broke their promise. They weren't able to do it. And there was this whole thing of wiggle room in your speech. And for whatever reason, when I was working my self-talk, that scene from that show came to mind. I got to leave some wiggle room in my speech. So when I say I always fail on the weekends, that means I'm not going to try to do things differently in the future. Why would I? Because I always fail. What's the point? I always fail. There's no point. When I say I always fail, I am operating from a place of helplessness, of powerlessness. I'm a victim to myself. And I was like, well, how could I say it in a way that's true, but that leaves wiggle room in my speech to leave the door open to being successful in the future and breaking the pattern in the cycle? And so I started saying, I have been struggling with in the past, blah, 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 blah. Up until recently, I've been really not doing great with blah, 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 blah. See how I'm adding that up until recently? I'm acknowledging the past, but I'm not speaking of the future. I'm keeping it past focused. And let's say I'm talking about the future. I would say things like, instead of saying I always fall apart on the weekends, I could say I have a tendency to fall apart on the weekends. Sometimes I don't, and I'm trying to learn why I don't on those weekends. You see how that's acknowledging, hey, sometimes I'm going to win. And when I win, I'm going to go learn why. But I know I'm probably going to fail a bit as I go along. That's that altering that speech, leaving wiggle room in it. And when I started leaving wiggle room in my speech, that made things a lot easier for me. It took off this pressure inside my mind, because it made it okay to slip up and it made it okay to succeed. And this is coming from not speaking in absolutes anymore. I never, I can't ever go eat at fast food. That's a black and white. That's an absolute. I decided I will do everything in my power to discontinue speaking in absolutes, because the future is unknowable. You don't know what's going to happen. And if we're honest with ourselves and we look to our past, we'll see the past isn't even in always. There's generally exceptions to almost everything. And I've got to stop speaking in absolutes. I suck. That's an absolute statement. That's not, I sometimes do things that suck, right? I'm a failure. That's an absolute statement. Definitive. I am a. Instead of, I fail sometimes. You hear the difference? Like, I'm a failure. I fail sometimes. Even if I say it with the exact same emotional intensity, it feels different. I'm going to do it again. I'm a failure. I fail sometimes. Like, one of them sounds harsher than the other. You can hear it. I mean, here, try it yourself. Say it right now. Say, I'm a failure. I fail sometimes. Ready? I'm serious. Say it. Are you going to do it? Or are you just going to listen to nothing for a few seconds? If you're around people, whisper it under your breath. I'm a failure. I fail sometimes. I forgot the statement. All right, you ready? 3, 2, 1, say it. I'm a failure. I fail sometimes. Do you feel the difference? Don't speak in absolutes. Speak in wiggle room. Speak in shades of gray. Because I don't want you to say, I'm going to lose all this weight this week. You don't know that. Leave some wiggle room. I'm going to have a perfect week this week. You don't know that. Leave some wiggle room. I'm shooting for a perfect week this week. You hear the difference? That's what I'm shooting for. You can say that, not I'm going to be perfect this week. You don't know that. Leave the wiggle room so that you have a chance to breathe. The other part, though, is you're going to catch yourself in the moment, using unhelpful speech, disempowering language, like you might insult yourself, as an example, or you might speak of yourself from a place of assuming you're going to fail. Like, I guess I'm going to try this thing, but it's probably too much. I'm probably going to fail. Like, that's way over the top. You can hear it in that. But it's like, let's say you set a big goal and then you hear yourself in your mind being like, I mean, are you sure you can do that? That's the failure talk, right? I mean, you got to look at the vibe behind it to see if it's just asking for caution or if you're just, not thinking you can do it. But let's say, I'll tell you a story that happened to me. This is the last time I can remember insulting myself. I have no memory since the one I'm about to tell you of insulting myself since. And this is now a couple of years old. So to set the scene of the practice, I had started several years prior. Whenever I would catch myself being mean to myself, I would apologize to myself. Now, at first, I just started doing it in my head. I would just be like, sorry, man. Then I started muttering it or whispering it. Then if I was by myself, I literally would say it out loud. And I would respond to myself as if I were two sides of the conversation. And I remember pulling up to Chipotle. And I don't know what I did. I don't remember what I did. I did something a little boneheaded. And it was probably something when I was driving. I don't know. I shot a gap or something, right? I don't remember. And I said to myself as I was getting out of the car, I'm like, man, you're so stupid. That was dumb. And as I'm walking away from the vehicle, I'm in the back of the parking lot, so it's an empty lot, and I'm halfway across it by myself in this empty lot. I literally stopped dead in my tracks, just stopped right there, and I said, that wasn't very nice. Apologize. And I stopped, and then I said out loud, man, self, I'm sorry. That wasn't nice. You're not stupid. I don't know why I said that. You're not stupid. Yes, what you did wasn't great, but you're not stupid. I'm sorry. I'm not going to call you that again. And then I said out loud, it's okay. Thank you for apologizing. And then I went into Chipotle, and I'm not sure I've ever insulted myself again since. I have been very critical of my behaviors. There are things I have done where I have looked back and said, that was not a good choice, self. That was the wrong answer. We can do better, right? I still assess my actions, but I don't say things like, you're stupid. Why are you so stupid, man? That was a dumb move. Even when I make a boneheaded move. Look, sometimes I do something that was just, there's smart moves and stupid moves. And sometimes I make the stupid move, but I'm not stupid. I'm not going to insult myself for that, right? I'm not immune from being a bonehead. Nobody is. And I need to give myself the space to be able to call out my behaviors and say, self, that wasn't good, and not make it personal. That's really all I've ever wanted from others. If somebody's going to hold me accountable, don't make it personal. Don't assassinate my character. Just let it be about the behavior and speak to me from a place of compassion of I'm assuming you didn't want to mess up. Even if it's totally your fault and it was preventable, are you going to do it again? Hold me accountable, but don't be like, well, you're probably going to mess up again because you're lazy and you don't listen. That's not nice. And I don't like when people talk to me that way. And I don't like it when I talk to me that way. And so as I began complimenting myself, as I began looking for things to praise myself on, as I began adding wiggle room into my speech to stop taking off all this pressure to make myself perfect, as I stopped speaking in absolutes and definitives of who I am and what I do now and forevermore, as I began to practice correcting my speech in the moment in the form of one of the example I gave here, one of many types, by apologizing to myself every time I'm mean to myself. And that led to me eventually not insulting myself for any reason, not even in jest, because I chose to believe. I chose it to believe that the mind is always listening. And if you're making fun of yourself, even in jest, your brain doesn't know the difference. It just knows you're making fun of it. That's all it knows. And I just chose to believe that. As I started working on all this, you know what started happening? My relationship with myself has gotten so much better. My desire to emotionally eat has gone way down. I can talk myself through situations. When I make a mistake, I'm not afraid to face me anymore. I'm not afraid to be held accountable by myself anymore. And when all this started happening, I started feeling more comfortable and safe around others. I'm not afraid of being held accountable. I'm not afraid of being told I messed up anymore. Because I now know what it looks like to be done, to have that done respectfully and not, because I've learned how to respectfully hold myself accountable, and I've learned how to respectfully be held accountable by doing it all with myself. And then when I got into the real world and somebody would hold me accountable in a disrespectful way, I could be like, nope, not tolerating that. That is a disrespectful way. I would not talk to myself that way. I am not going to tolerate you talking to me this way. Right? You can finally start doing that. And then when I'm holding somebody accountable, it's like, okay, I now can put myself in their shoes. How would I want to be talked to when I'm holding myself accountable? Like, well, how do I do it to me? Because I like the way I do it with me. It makes me feel better. I want to make this person feel better. I realize when you hold someone accountable, did you know you don't have to make them feel bad? This is one of those other things I took from my work and transferred to my personal life. I've managed people and teams for a long time. And I remember somebody who was newer to management came to me, and he had somebody that he needed to kind of get on her for some things that she was not doing great. And he had been talking with her, and it was like time to kind of ask, and he wanted to pick my brain on how I approach these things. And I just remember talking, I was like, man, one of the best bosses I had, whenever he would get on to me, I didn't know he was getting on to me, and yet I still wanted to change my behavior. I wasn't being criticized for what I was doing. I was being invited to do it a better way. I was being invited to improve, not being told to stop sucking. And I've realized a lot of us were conditioned when we hold someone accountable, we were supposed to make them feel bad. And look, that doesn't mean you feel good about your actions. You might feel bad about the actions, but I'm talking about like you have to feel bad about yourself personally. And when we get conditioned this way, it's like we then want to do that to others. And then when we're being held accountable, we'll get worried that a person's going to do that to us. And we end up developing a real negative relationship with accountability. And so a lot of us are so bad at it, we go to get an accountability partner in hopes that they'll hold us accountable because we don't know how to do it ourselves. But the reality is, you're your best accountability buddy, because you're the one that actually knows if you're giving yourself your best, because that's all you really can ask for yourself is your present best. That's all you can ask for, is giving your absolute best at this present moment. And the best of your present moment today may be better than yesterday's, and tomorrow it might be worse than today's, and the day after that might be better than all of them. Right? You're the only one that can know if you did it or not. And so what you really will find is helpful is to have an accountability partner in your own mind. And when you play both sides of the coin, you become better at it. You are a great person to practice this with. And as you work on your self-communication, your communication with others is going to improve too, because you will begin to see a better way and you will be able to more easily put yourself into the shoes of others. Now, you on your journey, if you're still listening to this podcast episode, I'm going to invite you to try this. Take a couple months. Take, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. I don't know. You make your own commitment. It's up to you. I don't care. You pick. But not 2 months. That's not long enough, because you might be resisting it too much first month. We got to make sure you do it long enough that you sort of get into the groove. Make it a thing. Intentionally seek positive things to say about yourself every single day for 6 months, and just watch how your life transforms. Just watch. Every day, compliment yourself out loud in a mirror. Every day. Look for something to praise yourself on. Every time you insult yourself, or you're mean to yourself, or you're attacking your self-worth, apologize to yourself fully and completely in the moment, and then forgive yourself. Do it every time. Every time. Tell yourself, there is never a good reason to insult myself. I can be critical of my behaviors, I can judge my actions, but I will not assassinate my character. I will not kick myself when I am down. I will encourage myself when I am down and remind myself that I can always do better. I'm not going to tell myself I suck. I'm going to invite myself to do better. And I'm going to receive it as an invitation to do better, not as an attack telling me how much I suck. Give it a try. Do not take my word for this at all. Go and test the word on it. Go try it. That's what I did. People have been telling me just like I'm telling you, and I didn't want to believe them. This is one of those things that I had to wait till I was 34 years old and I had to wait for my dad to die before I finally would go off and try it. And I had to go and look and see for myself that the way I talk to myself actually really matters. Go have a great day. Have a great week. Go kick butt on your weight loss journey. And I'll see you next week on the Becoming Thin podcast.